After my wife secretly used my savings to fund her affair partner's startup, I waited 6 months, became their biggest investor, legally took control during their product launch, revealed every private message to their employees, and left them crying outside the office they thought would make them millionaires forever. She said it at a dinner party. 11 people at the table. Wine glasses half full. Someone had just asked what I did for work. I said I managed risk assessment for a mid-sized financial firm. Azalea laughed. Not a small laugh. A long one. He means he reads spreadsheets and plays it safe, she said. The table went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then Kellen smiled from across the table. Stability is a comfort zone, he said. Not a strategy. More laughter. I picked up my glass. Didn't say a word. 3 months later, those same people watched security escort her out of a building she thought she'd helped build. It wasn't really about money anymore. It was about status. And she handed me everything I needed to take it back. I didn't see it all at once. That's the thing nobody tells you. Betrayal doesn't arrive in one moment. It moves slowly, like water under a door. First it was the silence in the car on the way home from that dinner. Then it was the phone turning face down every time I walked into the room. Then it was the comparisons. Kellen pitched 3 VCs this week. Kellen's team is building something that actually matters. You just don't think that way, Ryland. I used to ask what way she meant. She'd wave her hand like the answer was obvious. I didn't push. I didn't scream. I just started paying attention. I didn't realize it then, but she'd already stopped seeing me as her husband. I was furniture, background noise, stable, predictable, forgettable. But that wasn't even the part that destroyed me. If you enjoy real stories like this, subscribe, because what happened next changed everything for me. Let me back up. My name is Ryland, 38 years old. Azalea was 35 when all of this started unraveling. We met 9 years ago in Portland, married 6 years back, moved to Seattle when her firm transferred her to a new team. I kept my job remote. Risk assessment, financial modeling, quiet work that nobody at dinner parties found impressive. That was fine. I wasn't building for impressions. I was building for security. Over 11 years of working, I had put away $460,000. Not in a flashy brokerage account. Not in crypto. Boring index funds. A money market account. A small private equity position through my firm that had quietly done very well. Nobody knew about it. Not even Azalea. Not the full number. She knew we were comfortable. She didn't know how comfortable. That detail matters later. The startup party started 8 months before I found out. Azalea had met Kellen Trace through her firm's networking events. He was 32, founder of a company called Verint Systems. Cloud infrastructure software, supposedly. The kind of company that had a beautiful website, a compelling pitch deck, a rooftop office in Capitol Hill, and almost no actual revenue. But he talked well. He had that voice that made everything sound inevitable. We're not building software, he told people at those parties. We're building the backbone of what comes next. Azalea started quoting him like scripture. She started coming home later. She started wearing different things to these events. She started talking about ambition the way people talk about religion when they've just converted. You just don't think big enough, Ryland. He built all of this from nothing. You wouldn't understand startup culture. I nodded. I watched. I noticed. The first thing I noticed was the phone. She'd never been precious about her phone before. Suddenly, it had a new passcode. Suddenly, it was always in her bag, always face down, always in her hand when she walked from one room to another. I didn't say anything. I filed it. The second thing I noticed was her schedule. She started having dinners she described vaguely. Team event. Investor thing. Kellen's doing a soft launch. I said I'd come. I asked once if I was invited. She said it was a work thing. Smiled. Changed the subject. At the time, I told myself she was distracted. Later, I understood she was hiding something. The third thing I noticed was the money. I don't check our joint account obsessively, but I log into it once a month, the first Sunday, the same way I've done for 6 years. I logged in on a Sunday in March. The balance was wrong. Not slightly wrong. Significantly wrong. $43,000 wrong. I sat very still. I went back through the transaction history. 6 transfers over 4 months. Each one between $6,000 and $9,000. Each one sent to the same account. I wrote down the receiving account number on a piece of paper. I didn't say anything to Azalea. I put the paper in my desk drawer. I went downstairs and made coffee and watched the rain hit the kitchen window for a while. Then I went to work. It took me 11 days to trace the account. I have contacts in this industry. People who owe me quiet favors. The account number belonged to a business entity registered in Washington state. The entity was called Varen Capital Holdings LLC. Kellen Trace was listed as sole member. I read that sentence 3 times. My wife had taken $43,000 from our joint savings and wired it to her affair partner's holding company. I sat back in my chair. I didn't throw anything. I didn't call her. I looked at the ceiling for a long time. Then I thought about it differently. She hadn't just betrayed me emotionally. She had exposed herself financially. She had exposed him financially. And neither of them knew I knew. That gap between what they thought and what was real, that was the only thing that mattered now. That's when I stopped acting like a husband and started thinking like an investor. I spent the next 3 weeks researching Varen's systems the way I'd research any potential acquisition target. I pulled everything available: their Delaware incorporation documents, their Washington state business filings, the LLC structure of Varen Capital Holdings. I found their pitch deck online through a founder forum where Kellen had shared it publicly. I read it carefully. The numbers were dressed up beautifully, but I know how to read past the dressing. Their burn rate was aggressive. Nearly $200,000 a month in operating costs, and their current ARR barely covered 40% of that. They had raised a seed round of $1.2 million. Most of it was gone. They had one institutional investor, a small Seattle-based micro VC that had put in $300,000, and a handful of angel investors filling the rest. They were running out of runway. The pitch deck mentioned a Series A, but the timeline was optimistic in the way that means desperate. I dug further. There were 2 unpaid vendors in their filing history. A cloud hosting company that had sent a breach of contract notice. A UX design firm owed $68,000. The valuation Kellen was advertising to potential investors was $12 million. Based on what I was reading, $6 million was generous. He was out here selling a story, a very expensive story, and my wife had used our savings to help him tell it. I kept this information the way I kept everything now, quietly. Azalea started being warmer to me around this time. I don't know if she felt guilty or if she needed something. Maybe both. She made dinner one evening without being asked. Sat close to me on the couch. I feel like we've been distant, she said. We have been, I said. Is everything okay with us? I looked at her. Why wouldn't it be? She relaxed a little. That small, visible relaxation told me everything. She'd been nervous I knew something. I gave her nothing to read. Over the following weeks, she tried soft manipulation. Little comments designed to make me feel like the distance between us was my fault. You've never really been interested in what excites me. I just feel like you stopped trying to understand my world. I don't want to make you feel bad. I just want us to connect again. Classic reframe. Position the person you've wronged as the source of the wound. I'd seen it in boardrooms. I'd read about it in deposition transcripts. Watching it happen in my own living room was its own kind of education. I stayed calm. I stayed present. I gave her nothing. One night she asked, almost quietly, "Do you still trust me?" I looked up from my book. "Of course," I said. She exhaled, smiled, went to bed. I sat there another hour, reading nothing. The Series A process was starting. I knew because Azalea mentioned it casually, the way she mentioned things she was trying not to seem too excited about. Kellen's doing a big funding round next quarter. Things are moving. That's good for him, I said. It's good for everyone involved. I put my book down. What does that mean? She paused half a second too long. Just that the company is growing. People who believed in it early will do well. I nodded. Didn't push. She went to refill her wine. 3 days later, I called my attorney. I told my attorney I wanted to explore participating in a private Series A investment. He's dealt with enough of my work to ask only the questions that matter. I told him the company. He looked them up while we were on the phone. He said it looked like a small deal. I said I wanted to go in significant. He asked how significant. I said I wanted board observer rights at minimum, and if the round was structured correctly, I wanted a path to a controlling position. He went quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's not a passive investment." "No," I said. "It's not." He said he'd need to review the cap table and the existing shareholder agreements. I sent him everything I'd already pulled. He called back in 2 days. "This company needs money badly," he said. "The existing investors are diluted and 2 of the angels are looking for an exit. How much to get controlling interest? If you acquire the 2 angel positions and lead the Series A at the right terms, you're looking at somewhere between 280 and 320 to cross the threshold. With board control provisions? That's where the term sheet gets interesting," he said. "They'll accept almost anything right now." I told him to draft something. I told him to do it quietly. I told him not to use my name on anything facing the company. He used a holding entity I'd set up years ago for a different deal. Ryland Madden's name appeared nowhere. The term sheet went in through an intermediary. Kellen's team came back enthusiastically in 4 days. Of course they did. $300,000 with clean terms was more than they'd seen from anyone in months. I let the intermediary handle the first 2 meetings. I reviewed every document personally. The shareholder agreement had a clause I insisted on. In the event of financial misconduct by the founder or any material misrepresentation to investors, the board held the right to call an emergency vote on executive leadership. Kellen's lawyer reviewed it, flagged it as standard protective language. Didn't push back hard. They were too hungry for the capital to negotiate carefully. The deal closed quietly on a Thursday afternoon. I now held the largest single investor position in Verint Systems. Kellen didn't know who I was. Azalea celebrated that weekend. She told me Kellen had landed a major investor and that the product launch was being planned for the following month. He must be relieved, I said. He's brilliant, she said. I smiled. Sounds like it. I spent the following 3 weeks preparing. My attorney secured certified copies of every wire transfer from the joint account. We traced the $43,000 through Verint Capital Holdings and directly into Verint Systems operating account. That was commingling of investor funds with personal relationships. That was a material breach of the shareholder agreement Kellen had signed with his original micro VC investor. My attorney found something else too. Kellen had told early investors that he had no prior financial entanglements with any advisory relationships. Azalea had been listed internally as an advisory consultant for a 3-month period. She had received equity options. Options she never told me about. There it was. Not just an affair. Not just stolen savings. Securities fraud, neatly documented. I had it all printed and organized in a folder my attorney held. We were ready. The product launch was scheduled for a Friday evening. Rooftop venue in South Lake Union. Kellen had rented one of the glass-walled event spaces that overlook the water. Catering. An open bar. Media contacts invited. All of his investors, including the ones who didn't know they'd soon have a very bad evening. Azalea spent 2 hours getting ready. She wore the kind of dress she wore when she wanted to feel like she'd arrived somewhere. This is a big night, she said. I know, I said. She paused. Looked at me. You're not coming, are you? I am, actually. She blinked. You never come to these things. I have an interest in the company, I said. She laughed a little. Confused laugh. What does that mean? It means I'll see you there. I arrived 40 minutes after she did. The room was exactly what I expected. String lights above the terrace. Projection screens showing Verint's product demo. 70 or 80 people in small clusters, glasses in hand. The low hum of a crowd that wants to believe it's witnessing something important. I saw Kellen immediately. He was near the front, gesturing at the screen, charming a small group in the way that had probably charmed Azalea. I stayed near the edge of the room. I watched. My attorney arrived 8 minutes later with 2 colleagues and a paralegal. The micro VC's representative arrived at my invitation, having been briefed on the situation that afternoon. Azalea spotted me across the room. Her expression moved through 3 things in less than 2 seconds. Surprise. Confusion. Something close to fear. She crossed toward me. What are you doing here? Told you, I said. I have an interest. Ryland. Kellen saw me. He tilted his head slightly. He'd been told his lead investor might attend. He hadn't been told who the lead investor was. He crossed the room with his hand extended. You must be from the Madden Group, he said. Something like that, I said. I didn't shake his hand. He noticed. The room was still buzzing, unaware. Then my attorney stepped beside me. He handed Kellen a document. Emergency board notice, my attorney said. Per the shareholder agreement, Section 9, Clause 4. Called by the majority investor. Kellen looked down at the paper. His face didn't collapse immediately. It went still first. The way faces go still when the brain is catching up to something the body already understands. It happened in stages. Kellen tried to take my attorney aside privately. I stayed in the room. I asked the micro VC's representative to stand near the presentation screens. Kellen came back. Voice low. Controlled. Fake calm. Whatever issue you have, we can discuss this after the event. Tonight isn't the time. The notice has already been served, I said. The board can convene whenever the majority investor requests. You can't just. I can, I said. Read Clause 4. He looked at Azalea. She was standing 6 feet away. She had gone very white. Do you know him? Kellen asked her. She didn't answer immediately. The silence was its own answer. He looked back at me. Who are you? Her husband, I said. The two words landed in the middle of the room like something dropped from a height. Nearby conversations stopped. People started turning. The board notice required acknowledgement from the two other board-eligible investors. Both were in the room. My attorney had confirmed that before the evening. One of them, a Seattle angel named Madden Trace who'd put in $80,000, had been told 2 hours earlier about the financial misconduct findings. He acknowledged the notice. The second investor followed. Kellen had no response that was legally coherent. His own attorney was not present. He had not thought he would need one tonight. The emergency vote was called. It was a formality at this point. The majority of voting shares supported the motion. Kellen Trace was removed as active CEO, pending a full investigation. The room had been watching for 4 minutes now. 70 people holding champagne, they'd stopped drinking. Phones appearing. The paralegal approached the presentation screens. She was carrying a tablet connected to the projector. My attorney had given Kellen the option, earlier, to make a statement first. He'd refused to acknowledge the situation. So the second part began. The screen behind Kellen changed. It showed a series of internal Slack messages from Varen's company workspace. Kellen's messages to Azalea. Not all of them. Just the ones relevant to the financial arrangement. The wire cleared. You're officially in this with me. Don't tell your husband, obviously. Once we close the A round, you'll have your money back, and then some. Trust me. Our investors can't know we have a personal arrangement. Keep it clean on paper. The room read in silence. One of the startup employees, a young woman near the left side of the terrace, put her hand over her mouth. Another employee pulled out his phone. The micro VC representative turned and walked toward the exit. Azalea moved toward me. She wasn't angry. She was past that. Her eyes were filling. Ryland, please. You already made your choice, I said. I can explain. I know you can. I looked at her. That's not what tonight is about. What is tonight about? I didn't answer. I turned back to the room. Kellen was standing near the terrace railing. He looked smaller than he had an hour ago. The charisma had somewhere to go when the room was full of people who believed in him. Now the room was full of people checking their phones and avoiding eye contact. This is going to be a lawsuit, he said to me. Quiet. Almost a whisper. You know that. I do, I said. You'll spend more fighting it than you put in. Probably, I said. He stared at me. Then why? I didn't say anything. He didn't actually want an answer. He wanted a reason that made sense in the language he spoke. Money in, money out. Roy. Leverage. He was never going to understand the real answer. The real answer was standing 6 feet away, crying quietly into her hands. Security had been arranged in advance. 2 people from the building's management team, briefed by my attorney before the event. They appeared near the elevator at the appropriate moment. Not aggressive, just present. Kellen looked at them for a long moment. He straightened his jacket. He looked around the room one more time. Some of his employees were still there, watching. None of them moved toward him. He walked to the elevator. Azalea followed. She stopped just before the elevator doors. She turned back. Our eyes met across the room. I held her gaze. I didn't smile. I didn't look away. I just waited. She stepped into the elevator. The doors closed. The room took a long time to clear. I stood at the terrace railing for a while after most people had left. The city was doing what it always does. Moving. Glowing. Not caring. One of Kellen's employees approached me near the end. Young guy. Developer, from the look of him. Maybe 26. Is the company finished? He asked. Not necessarily, I said. He nodded slowly. The product actually works, he said. The tech is real. I know, I said. I read everything. He seemed surprised by that. He left without saying anything else. My attorney found me at the railing. How do you feel? He asked. Like I have a lot of paperwork to do, I said. He laughed once short. Divorce filing Monday? Monday, I said. He nodded. We left together. The aftermath was quiet from my end. Loud from theirs. Kellen's legal team sent 2 letters in the following week. Both were aggressive. Both were, in my attorney's words, structurally weak. The documentation we had compiled was clean and thorough. The financial misconduct findings were forwarded to the relevant state authorities. The micro VC filed a separate civil claim within 10 days. Varen Systems' 2 unpaid vendors both escalated. The startup didn't collapse immediately. These things rarely do. They crumble in stages. Key employees left first. Then the media coverage shifted. Then the remaining investors quietly began exploring exits. Azalea moved out. She took what was hers. She left a message on my phone 3 days after moving out. She said she was sorry. She said she hoped someday I'd understand. I listened to it once. I didn't save it. I didn't call back. I heard through my attorney that Kellen left Seattle, moved to Phoenix, based on some LinkedIn activity someone forwarded to me. New company name. Same kind of pitch. I didn't do anything with that information. It wasn't mine to chase anymore. Azalea lost the equity options. She lost the advisory position. She lost the status she'd been building toward for 8 months. She kept her job at her firm, at least for a while. I don't know what happened after that. I stopped tracking. The developer was right, as it turned out. The product worked. Under new interim leadership, a board-appointed operator with actual operational experience, the technology was quietly acquired by a larger infrastructure company 9 months later. The deal was modest. Nothing like Kellen's $12 million fantasy valuation, but enough that the remaining investors recovered most of their capital, including me. I didn't make money on the investment. I didn't lose much either. That was never really the point. People ask me sometimes, when I've shared pieces of this with people I trust, whether I feel satisfied. I usually say I feel finished. There's a difference. Satisfaction implies something was gained. What I felt, standing at that terrace railing watching the elevator doors close, wasn't gain. It was just the end of something. A subtraction. Everything that had been built on a lie, removed. I went home that night, made tea, sat at my desk, opened my financial accounts. The numbers were still there. Patient. Quiet. The same as they'd always been. The rain came in off the sound around midnight. I watched it for a while. Then I went to sleep. Neither of them looked successful anymore. I removed her access permanently the following morning. She never called again.